Hey everyone! Drop your thoughts, lessons learned, and perspectives in the comments below. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe, and share with your friends. Nicole Wills felt her heart beat faster as she stepped into the university's big charity gala. She adjusted her simple black dress, smoothing out a wrinkle. Across the crowded room, George Wills stood behind a raffle table handing out tickets with a warm smile. Nicole noticed how he made every person feel special, asking their name, listening closely. That caught her attention. Nicole walked over, curious. "What's your favorite part of these events?" she asked, handing him her ticket stub. George grinned. "Meeting people who really care. I'm studying hospitality. Someday, I'll own a place where everyone feels at home." Nicole liked how he spoke. Honest. Kind. She found herself laughing at his jokes and sharing her own dreams about consulting, making companies better, changing the world one boardroom at a time. They talked for hours, losing track of time. A slow song began, and George offered his hand. They danced, close enough to feel each other's warmth. Nicole sensed a spark, that rare pull you hear about in movies. Before the night ended, George walked her to the exit. "Can I see you again?" he asked, voice hopeful. Nicole nodded. "I'd like that." Walking back to her dorm, Nicole felt lighter than air. She'd met someone who saw her, who listened. George felt it too. That night, under campus lights, two hearts started a story neither of them saw coming. 5 years later, Nicole's heels clicked down a glass hallway in a high-rise office. She just closed a massive consulting deal and exchanged a victorious high-five with her best friend, Elena Ruiz. Reporters snapped photos outside. Colleagues applauded. Nicole's face glowed with pride. She felt on top of the world. Meanwhile, across town in a cozy neighborhood block, George tied his apron before opening the doors of his restaurant. Early morning sunlight filled the dining room. He wiped tables, arranged fresh flowers in a vase, and greeted Mrs. Walker, a regular who came every Tuesday for soup. George loved these small moments, watching families laugh over pancakes, listening to old friends catch up. He hummed as he cooked, imagining each dish as a hug from the kitchen. Nicole and George had built their dreams side by side, but their worlds looked different now. Nicole lived in glossy skyscrapers and sleek conference rooms. George thrived in warm kitchens and friendly chatter. They still loved each other, but lately their days barely overlapped. Nicole would rush home at midnight, exhausted but triumphant. George would already be asleep, dreaming of tomorrow's specials. They shared breakfast on weekends, quick coffees between Zoom calls and brunch menus. Nicole talked about strategy charts and corporate politics. George shared recipes and restaurant gossip. Both nodding, both smiling, but their hearts felt a little distant. That Sunday morning, Nicole looked at George stirring his signature stew. She touched his arm. "I missed you this week," she said softly. George paused, spoon in midair. "Me too. I wish we could have dinner together like we used to." Nicole forced a smile. "Soon. This project ends next week." George nodded, hiding a pang in his chest. He believed her, he had to. But inside, he wondered if soon ever meant now. Nicole slapped her laptop shut at 9 p.m. in her glass-walled office. The night team cheered as they wrapped a billion-dollar pitch. She felt alive. Every minute here gave her purpose. But her phone buzzed with a text. "Dinner plans?" It was George. She stared at it, guilt creeping in. Back at the restaurant, George turned off the open sign. He glanced at the empty table where he'd imagined Nicole sitting. He felt lonely in the quiet hush. He counted the days since they had a proper date night. 12. He ran his finger over their photo on his phone, happy, younger selves at a campus festival. He sighed. The next morning, George met Marcus Lee in the kitchen. Marcus tossed dough for a new pizza. You okay, buddy? You seem off. George stirred his coffee, strong and black. I miss her. She's gone from home more than she's here. Marcus frowned. She's chasing a dream, yeah. But she loves you. George nodded, but his heart felt heavy. He wondered if her love was enough to bridge the gap between her skyscraper world and his cozy corner of the city. At the office, Nicole waved at Elena. I'm so sorry. Didn't mean to bail on our date. Elena squeezed her shoulder. It's the season, Nick. They'll understand. Nicole watched the city skyline through floor-to-ceiling windows. She loved this view. She loved this job. But that ping from George's text still tugged at her. She missed him too, more than she wanted to admit. George locked the back door of Wills's kitchen late that night, the small bell above it tinkling as he slipped inside the empty dining room. He dropped his jacket over a chair and sat at their special corner table, where he and Nicole used to share late-night slices and plot their futures. He stared at the table's worn wood grain, remembering Nicole's bright laugh as she traced her finger around it. Marcus Lee, his sous chef and oldest friend, was wiping down prep stations. He glanced up, concern in his eyes. You okay, George? George ran a hand through his hair. I don't know, Marcus. I love running this place, but I feel like I'm losing Nicole. His voice cracked. She's off in meetings, boardrooms, dinners with clients. I'm here frying potatoes. Marcus set down his rag and came over. She's doing amazing things, man. She told me how proud she is of you. George looked down at his hands. I know she's proud, but pride doesn't fill the seat next to me at dinner. It doesn't call me late at night just to say, I miss you. It doesn't look at me like she means it. Marcus leaned forward. So tell her, George. Plan a surprise. Show her this place. Remind her why you're the heart of her world. George nodded, but doubt lingered. What if she's moved on? What if she doesn't need me here anymore? Marcus gave him a firm look. She's your wife. She chose you 5 years ago. She still needs you. Maybe more than ever. George exhaled slowly. He stood and gathered dirty dishes, carefully stacking them. You're right. I can't just sit here feeling sorry for myself. He paused, gaze drifting to the window, where the streetlights cast warm pools of light. I need to remind her why she fell in love in the first place. Marcus clapped him on the shoulder. That's the spirit. Now let's close up. Tomorrow you'll figure out how to bring her back. As they finished the last of the chores, George felt a small spark of hope. He'd find a way to bridge the gap between his cozy kitchen and her high-rise world, one comforting bowl of soup at a time. Nicole stepped out of the elevator on the 25th floor, clutching her briefcase. Elena Ruiz was already waiting by the conference table, eyes bright. You did it. Elena cheered, handing her a bottle of sparkling water. Nicole smiled, adrenaline rushing. We closed the Stanton account. 30 million in revenue next year. They laughed, clinking bottles. To Team Wills, Elena toasted. Who knew you'd shake up corporate consulting like this? Nicole took a sip, her gaze drifting to the floor-to-ceiling windows. The city sprawled beneath them, an endless maze of lights, cars, and dreams. She'd worked her tail off to get here. All those late nights, skipped dinners, even skipped Christmas at home. It had been worth it. Elena leaned in. Let's celebrate tonight. Cocktails at that rooftop bar. Nicole hesitated. She glanced at her watch, 6:15 p.m. Home, George would be closing the restaurant. Dinner plans? She had none. Sure, she said, forcing a smile. But I need to check in with George first. Elena raised an eyebrow. Again with George? Can't you let the guy worry a little less? Nicole felt a pang of guilt. I love him, she said softly. I just hate that I can't give him more time. They headed into the boardroom where colleagues applauded. Cameras flashed. Every face looked happy for her. Yet beneath her excitement, Nicole felt the tug of something else, an emptiness she couldn't shake. She typed a quick message, "Dinner?" Sent. As she joined the celebration, she promised herself she'd fix this. Maybe next week she'd take a night off. Maybe she'd surprise George at the restaurant. She needed to remind him and herself why they started this journey together. The restaurant was dark when George stepped into the back storage room to grab extra napkins. He nearly tripped over two men huddled by the stock shelves, their tattoos snaking down their arms in intricate patterns. They whispered in low tones, glancing at each other like co-conspirators. George froze. He strained to hear. Tattooed man number 1, broad-shouldered with a scar across his cheek, spoke first. Tomorrow night. Flight 742. You've got the details? Tattooed man number 2, lean and quiet, nodded. Departure at 2:45 a.m. They'll never see it coming. The crew's elite. They pay good. George's pulse thumped in his ears. Crew? Elite? He swallowed. He couldn't make out names, but the flight number stuck in his mind, 742. He backed away, heart hammering, and spilled the napkins. The men jumped. Tattooed man number 1 cursed. Who's there? George yanked the door, rushing out before they could react. In the kitchen, he leaned against the counter, breathing hard. His mind raced. Crew, flight 742. Was Nicole on that flight? He'd heard her mention a late-night business trip. They had booked seats weeks ago for a client meeting overseas. Nicole's trip. His stomach dropped. He grabbed his phone and dialed Marcus. Marcus, you up? Marcus answered groggily. It's midnight. What's wrong? George whispered the flight number. Marcus paused. That's Nicole's flight. George clenched his fist. They're talking about a hit. On her crew. Marcus, I need to know everything about Flight 742. As he spoke, fear and fury burned inside him. He wouldn't let those men hurt Nicole. Not if he could stop them. George paced his small apartment, replaying the whispered voices from the restaurant's back room over and over. He scribbled notes on a scrap of paper. Flight 742, 2:45 a.m., paid hit. Business crew. But he had no idea who the crew was or who the target might be. Nicole often spoke about her colleagues, Elena, her client team, a legal advisor, but nothing specific enough to match business crew. His heart thumped like a drum. He needed more details. He dialed Marcus again. Anything else you can find? Passenger list? Names? His voice trembled. Marcus sighed. Flights are private records, man. I can't just pull a list. Maybe you should call Nicole and ask where she's heading, get more clues. George bit his lip. He didn't want to freak her out before he was sure. Okay, he said. I'll ask casually. No panic. He took a deep breath and tapped out a text. Hey love, can you remind me what time you leave tomorrow? Got a call from the client about schedule. He sent it and stared at the screen, willing Nicole to reply. Seconds crawled by. His phone buzzed. Flight 742, 2:45 a.m. I leave from Terminal 3. Her reply was quick, almost too quick. She added, busy day, sorry I won't be around for dinner. Love you. George's chest tightened. Terminal 3. That matched what he overheard. He jotted it down. But still no names. He blurred his mind between fear and determination. He couldn't face her tomorrow without answers. He needed to know who the crew was. He needed names. That night, sleep eluded him. He stared at the ceiling, picturing those tattooed men and imagining them somewhere near Terminal 3 waiting for the crew. He thought of Nicole stepping off that plane, unarmed, unsuspecting. His stomach churned. He vowed he'd find out exactly who they meant, even if it took every contact he had, every resource, every ounce of courage. Nicole was his wife. He wouldn't let her die on some dark runway. Not on his watch. The next morning, George arrived at the restaurant before dawn. The lights were still dim and the only sound was the hum of the refrigerator. He poured himself a cup of strong coffee, black, no sugar, and stared out the front window at empty streets. He knew Nicole's flight left that night. Every client meeting, every boardroom victory suddenly felt like it might be her final goodbye. Marcus found him nursing the coffee. "You look like help," Marcus said, sliding into the seat across from him. George forced a smile. "I'm fine. Just need to finish prep early today." Marcus studied him. "You sure? You've been off since last night." George nodded, then tapped his phone. "Hey, what's the pickup at the other end? Who's meeting you in London?" He hit send, his fingers trembling again. Nicole replied in minutes, "It's the FinTech team. We'll meet at their London office. ETA, 4 p.m. local." She signed off with a heart emoji. George stared at FinTech team. He'd heard her mention FinTech in passing, an emerging startup she'd been consulting for. But nothing about a hit or violence. FinTech team sounded harmless, ambitious interns, bright-eyed analysts. But could those men see them as a crew? Maybe. He didn't know. He shrugged off Marcus's worried look. "She's coaching a startup. No big deal." But inside he couldn't shake the dread. As the restaurant came to life, ovens fired up, staff arrived. George pretended to focus on omelets and coffee refills. Every customer greeting felt like a lie. His mind circled back to those tattoos, the jagged lines, the dark shapes that meant danger. All day he checked the time, 9 a.m., 10 a.m., 11 a.m. By midday he felt hollow. He watched the clock move toward his break. Finally, he messaged Nicole, "Call me when you're free." She texted back, "In a meeting. We'll call after." He exhaled, refusing to let panic show to his staff. As afternoon sun streamed through the windows, George quietly closed the kitchen door and leaned against the wall. He took out his phone, ready to call Nicole the moment she was free. He needed her voice. He needed to hear her say she was safe. If she didn't answer, he'd race to the airport himself. He would do whatever it took to stop whatever was coming. At 1:30 p.m., George finally heard his phone ring. He jabbed at it, nearly dropping it. "Nicole?" Her voice came, low and hurried. "Hey, where are you?" he blurted. "I'm coming to see you." Nicole sighed. "George, I'm in a board meeting. We're finalizing slides. I'll call you after." He could almost hear her frustration. "Can you pause for a minute? I want to make sure you're okay. Flight 742? You still on it?" She was silent for a fraction. "Yes, unless something changes." Her tone was cool, businesslike. He winced. "Promise me you'll stay put tonight. Maybe a delay?" His words tumbled. Nicole cut in, voice crisp. "George, stop. You're scaring me. I'm a professional. That flight is safe. I'll see you when I see you." He felt his chest tighten. "Please." She ended the call. George stared at the blank screen, heart pounding. She was brushing him off. The same bold woman he loved was telling him to back off. He realized how serious this was. He had to act now. He couldn't wait for her to see the reason. He pocketed his phone and squared his shoulders. Today he'd get to Terminal 3. He'd find proof. Something the airport directory, a staff member, even a stranger could tell him. If he could uncover who that FinTech crew was and why someone wanted them dead, he might stop this. He slipped on his jacket, determination lighting his eyes. The battle had just begun. George stepped into Nicole's sleek apartment lobby just after work, breath catching in his throat. He decided he needed to face her even if she pushed him away. He rode the elevator up, heart hammering. The door to their home clicked open, and he found Nicole already in her suit jacket, packing her laptop into a travel bag. "Nicole," he began softly, voice trembling. She paused, eyes cool. "Please, can we talk?" She looked at him wearily. "George, I've got to leave for the airport soon." He closed the door behind him and walked forward. "I know, but I heard something at the restaurant last night. Two men, tattooed, plotting a hit on Flight 742. Nicole raised an eyebrow. That sounds like a bad movie, George. He held up the scrap of paper with the flight number. It's real. I heard them say the flight number and time. I think they meant you and your team. She set her bag down, arms crossed. You mean your imagination. You're scared. Her voice shook, but it wasn't fear. It was anger. I booked this trip weeks ago. Work matters, George. You should trust me. He took a step closer, voice desperate. I do trust you, but I don't trust those men. They meant violence. You could die. Nicole's eyes glistened. Stop it. She looked away. Why can't you believe me? I've never let you down. His throat tightened. I love you. I can't lose you. Nicole stood up straighter. I'm a consultant. I'm strong. I handle danger every day. She looked him in the eye. But I can't handle this, your fear, your jealousy. She touched his arm, but with distance. Please, let me go. George's voice cracked. Please stay. Just postpone the flight one day. I'll prove it to you. She shook her head, tears threatening. No. You're not listening. You don't trust me. I can't be with someone who stops me from doing my work. He reached out, but she slipped past him. I'm sorry. Her voice was soft but final. As the taxi pulled away, George sank to the floor of the apartment, heartbroken. He watched her taillights fade. His plea for patience had failed. He felt helpless, knowing time was running out and she was heading straight into danger. Nicole sat alone in the taxi, stare fixed on the passing city lights. Her heart pounded with a mix of anger and hurt. George's words replayed in her mind, his fear, his desperation. How could he doubt her professionalism? How could he treat her like a child who couldn't handle her job? She slammed her fist lightly against the car door. I'm not weak, she snapped into the empty space. I built my career from scratch. She thought of the nights she'd studied, the weekends she'd given up, the sacrifices George had made for her. Yet he couldn't give her the space she needed now. When she reached the airport terminal, she walked past crowds without seeing them. She booked her ticket at the desk, heart hollow. Flight 742 to London, she said, voice flat. The agent handed her boarding pass. Gate 18, boarding at 1:15 a.m. Nicole tucked the pass into her pocket. She felt a fierce sting in her chest. Her phone buzzed, George's name flashing. She ignored it. She needed focus. She headed through security, shoulders squared, determination masking her fear. 30 minutes later, she texted Elena, I'm on flight 742. Call me when you land. No, I love you, no reassurance. She felt too raw. At the gate, she watched other passengers. Business crews, families, holiday travelers. She remembered George's warning about a hit. She forced herself to breathe deeply. She was safe. She was trained. She refused to let fear rule her. Her phone buzzed again, another message from George, please be careful. I love you. She stared at the words, tears sliding silently. She wiped them away. I'm strong, she whispered. I'm fine. Nicole stood in line to board, head high. Inside her, fury burned hotter. In the restaurant's empty dining room, George sat hunched over his laptop. The glow from the screen lit his anxious face. He'd promised himself one last shot. Digital detective work. He opened a new browser window and typed Flight 742 safety record into the search bar. Marcus peered over his shoulder. What are you doing? I need to know if this flight ever had an accident, George replied, scrolling. Maybe this was a pattern. Maybe they picked that number for a reason. They found a forum post about Flight 742. Unremarkable history. No crashes. Always on time. George's heart sank. If the flight was safe, then maybe he was wrong. He closed the window, but his guilt wouldn't let him stop. He switched tabs and searched recent threats against aviation crew. A few articles popped up, thin on details, mostly rumors. Nothing concrete. His chest tightened. He needed proof of the hit, not just paranoia. Call a contact, Marcus suggested softly. Your supplier who got you that oil. Maybe he knows. Guys like him hear things. George hesitated, then dialed a hidden number. The line crackled. It's George, he whispered. Listen, I need info on Flight 742. Word on anything bad. There was a pause, then a low voice. Be careful what you stir up. But yeah, there's talk. Big money behind a hit. No names yet. George's pulse quickened. Any targets? Supposedly executives. A consultant crew. Keep digging. He hung up and sank back. He had proof it wasn't all in his head. That was enough. He messaged Marcus, we're onto something. They're after a consulting crew. That's her team. He stared at Nicole's last text. Call me when you land. His chest twisted. He knew time was slipping. He closed the laptop and grabbed his keys. I need to see Detective Chin, he said, voice firm. Now. Marcus nodded. I'll lock up. George walked out into the cool night, resolved blazing. He would stop this plot no matter what it took. George sat at the small desk in his apartment, surrounded by open books, scribbled notes, and a half-empty mug of tea. The glow from his laptop made deep circles under his eyes. He knew the clock was ticking. Nicole's flight was hours away, and he still didn't have proof or a plan solid enough to stop her. He scrolled through online forums, legal filings, and aviation forums. He looked for any hint about threats against consulting crews, but most results were generic warnings or old rumors. He needed something more immediate, more real. He shut the laptop with a snap, frustration rolling through him like thunder. He picked up his phone and called a number he hadn't used in years. Billy Soothing Hands Morales, a former supplier from his last emergency, the time he'd nearly burned down his own kitchen trying a new hot oil technique. Billy answered on the second ring, surprised but not shocked. George Wills? Haven't heard from you in ages, Billy said, voice low and cautious. George swallowed. I need a favor. I heard something bad about Flight 742. I think they're targeting a consulting crew. My wife's on that flight. There was a long pause. Man, that's serious. But it's not my place to judge. What do you need? George's heart pounded. I need your therapeutic foot massage oil. You know, the kind that's hot enough to shock someone awake without lasting damage. Billy chuckled nervously. You know I can't just hand that out. It's homemade, people misuse it. Please, George begged. I have to ground her. I'll do anything. Billy sighed. All right. Meet me in 1 hour at the old warehouse on 5th Street. Be discreet. George hung up and felt relief and dread swirl together. He grabbed his keys and jacket, pausing for a moment. He was about to cross a line he never thought he would. But if it saved Nicole, any line would be worth crossing. An hour later, he stood in the dim light of the warehouse. Billy handed him a small vial of golden oil. Use it right, he warned. Too hot and you'll really harm her. Not hot enough and she'll still get on that plane. George nodded, clutching the vial like a lifeline. He took a deep breath. Tonight, he'd risk everything to keep Nicole safe. Sunlight peeked through the curtains when George first smelled coffee brewing in the kitchen. He rubbed his tired eyes and heard soft humming. Nicole was already up. He checked the old analog clock on the wall, 7:15 a.m. Flight 742 left at 2:45 a.m. the next day. He had less than 19 hours to act. Nicole walked in wearing an emerald green robe and a towel wrapped around her hair. She smiled at George, her warmth still bright despite their argument. Morning, she said, pouring coffee into 2 mugs. Morning, he replied, voice tight. He handed her a mug. I thought you might like a foot massage. Your arches sounded sore on the phone last night. Nicole raised an eyebrow. That's sweet, but I don't need one. George sat beside her, setting the vial on the table like a medicine bottle. It's new. Billy Morales helped me get this blend. It's supposed to ease tension. He tried to keep his tone casual. Nicole studied the tiny vial. Therapeutic oil, she asked, picking it up. She sniffed it and nodded. Fine, but don't burn me. He managed a small grin. I won't. They moved to the living room couch. Nicole removed her slippers and propped her feet on a pillow. George warmed the oil in his hands, careful not to let it touch his skin first. He pressed his palm against his chest to test the heat. It was hot but bearable. Nicole closed her eyes as George gently rubbed the oil into her soles. She sighed. Okay, she began, voice soft, this feels good. George's heart thumped. He leaned forward, more oil ready. Every second felt like an eternity. He told himself it was for her own good. She deserved to live. George watched Nicole relax, her brow smoothing as tension eased from her shoulders. He felt a pang of guilt tighten his chest, then shoved it away. This drastic step had to work. He scooped another spoonful of oil and brought it close to her foot. Let me know if it's too hot. Okay? He murmured. She opened her eyes and nodded. I trust you. He tipped the oil onto her arch. For a moment, she gasped in surprise. The hot liquid slithered over her skin, and pain flared like a crackling fire. Nicole's eyes flew open. George! She cried, jerking her foot back. Nicole, I'm sorry, he yelled, catching her leg. But it was too late. Her scream echoed off the walls. She clutched her foot, tears streaming down her face. George's heart shattered. He grabbed a towel and pressed it to her foot, but her legs went limp. She collapsed backward, eyes wide with shock and fury. He caught her, lowering her gently to the floor. Call 911, he shouted, shaking. His voice trembled. Nicole, stay with me. He dialed emergency services, tears blurring his vision. Paramedics arrived within minutes, moving swiftly around them. George stood back as they treated Nicole's burns and loaded her onto a stretcher. Is she going to be okay? He asked, voice raw. One paramedic glanced at him. She'll live. She'll need treatment and rest. But she'll live. George watched as they wheeled Nicole into the ambulance. His legs felt weak. He whispered, I'm so sorry, even though she couldn't hear him. As the ambulance doors closed, George knew their lives had changed forever, but at least she was alive. George paced the hallway outside the emergency room, heart pounding so loud he thought the walls might shake. He'd never felt so helpless. Every tick of the clock echoed in his ears. He clutched his phone, replaying Nicole's last words in his head, and swore he'd never doubt her strength again. A nurse emerged, eyes gentle but serious. Mr. Wills? You can see her now, but keep it brief. She led him to a private room where Nicole lay on a narrow bed, her foot wrapped in bandages and ice to dull the pain. When George saw her pale face, tears welled up. He approached slowly, feeling guilty with every step. Nicole, he whispered. Nicole's eyes fluttered open. She saw him, and pain flickered in her gaze. George? Her voice cracked, but she managed a weak smile. He pulled a chair close and sat, taking her hand. I'm so sorry, he said, voice thick. I thought it was the only way. His thumb brushed her knuckles. I never meant to hurt you. Nicole looked away, tears slipping down her cheek. You did hurt me, she said softly. But you saved my life. She squeezed his hand. I know you love me. George bit his lip, holding back more tears. I panicked. I've been so scared to lose you. He glanced at her foot. They said you'll be in a cast for weeks. No flight. No work. She managed a small laugh. Well, Mr. Overprotective, you've grounded me. Her humor was brittle but real. It hit him how serious things had gotten. George leaned forward. I'll take care of you. Every minute you're in this hospital, I'll be here. He brushed a strand of hair from her face. I'll make it up to you. Nicole closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, there was something softer there, warmth, relief. Just stay, she said. Stay with me. He nodded, a weight lifting from his chest. As he settled beside her, he realized healing would take more than bandages. It would take trust, honesty, and time. But for now, the steady beep of the heart monitor was enough to remind him she was alive. George watched the TV mounted in the waiting area as a breaking news banner rolled across the screen. His stomach sank. The anchor's voice sounded distant, like coming from underwater. "We have just confirmed Flight 742 en route to London experienced a catastrophic failure shortly after takeoff. There are no confirmed survivors. Investigations are underway." He felt the room spin. The world around him blurred. He crumpled into a chair, flashing back to the two tattooed men whispering in his restaurant, to Nicole striding past him toward that plane. His chest tightened so badly he thought he might collapse. Marcus, who'd shown up as soon as he heard, sat beside George. He slapped his friend's back. "George, man," Marcus's voice was raw. George's jaw went rigid. "Nicole," he gasped. She's alive." He looked at the closed door of the ER room where Nicole lay. "She's alive." Marcus nodded, tears in his eyes. "They said no survivors on the flight. But you stopped her." George's head snapped up. "Yeah, I did." Relief and horror tangled inside him. Relief that Nicole was safe. Horror at what might have happened. He turned back to the TV. Experts spoke about black box recorders, mechanical failure, and a possible explosion. No mention of foul play yet. But George knew better. Those men had planned something sinister. He stuffed his hands in his pockets and rose. "I need to tell Nicole." He strode toward her room, chest pounding. As he passed doctors and nurses, he saw their solemn faces. Each step felt heavier but more determined. He'd risked everything to save her, and now he'd risk everything more to bring the truth to light. Nicole lay in her hospital bed, the steady beep of machines lulling her into half-awake daze. George sat beside her, head bowed, guilt and relief battling across his face. When she stirred, he looked up immediately, eyes bright. "Hey," she whispered. Her voice was fragile but soft. "Hey," George replied, taking her hand. "They said no one survived." His voice cracked. "If I hadn't." Nicole squeezed his hand. "You did, George. You saved me." She winced as she shifted. "My foot. This cast is brutal." He smiled, relief washing over him. "You'll dance again." He squeezed her hand back. "I'm just glad you're here." Nicole closed her eyes briefly, catching her breath. "I'm sorry I yelled," she said. "I was angry, hurt." George shook his head. "I shouldn't have poured oil on you. But I couldn't watch you go." She rested her head back. "I know." She opened her eyes, gazing at him. "Let's not waste more time." Her voice firmed up. "We find those guys, George?" He nodded, determination flaring. "We will." He leaned forward, pressing his forehead against hers. "I promise." They sat together, hands entwined, the world outside forgotten for a heartbeat. Nicole's chest rose and fell steadily, the pain in her foot a distant echo compared to the ache in her heart. But for the first time since the crash news, she felt calm. She had George, flawed and freaked out George, by her side. Together, they would piece this puzzle together. Outside the window, the city lights blinked on, mirroring the steady beacons of the heart monitor. Nicole closed her eyes, feeling shaken but grateful. The road ahead would be hard, but she wasn't walking it alone. George sat beside Nicole's hospital bed, the sterile white walls humming with machines. He took a deep breath, his hands trembling slightly as he cleared his throat. Nicole watched him, her eyes soft but focused. "Nicole," George began, voice low, "I want to tell you everything I overheard." He paused, searching her face for any sign of doubt. "Last night, after we argued, I went back to the restaurant. I heard two tattooed men talking in the back room." Nicole's brow furrowed. "You did?" she asked quietly, blinking away pain. Her tone was calm, curious. George nodded, swallowing hard. They mentioned a hit. They said, paid hit on a business crew aboard Flight 742. They named the flight number and time. They didn't say who the crew was, but I put it together, it was your team. Nicole's eyes widened. She pressed her hand to her chest. They meant me, she whispered. Me and Elena and maybe our clients. A chill ran down her spine. She'd trusted her own strength, now she felt vulnerable. George continued, voice steady. I tried to warn you. You didn't believe me, so I did something terrible. His face fell. I poured that hot oil on your feet. It was wrong, but I saw no other way to keep you from boarding. Nicole stared at her bandaged foot for a moment, then back at George. You scared me, she said softly. But you saved me. Her voice cracked with raw emotion. I get why you did it, even if it hurt like hell. Tears formed in George's eyes. He reached out and brushed a tear from her cheek. I swear, I'll fix this, he promised. I'll find those men. I'll find who hired them. Nicole nodded, determination flaring in her gaze. First, we need proof, she said. We need every detail you remember, voices, words, anything. She touched his hand. We do this together. George squeezed her hand, relief and resolve mixing in his chest. He pulled a small notebook from his pocket and flipped it open to the page where he'd scribbled Flight 742, 2:45 a.m., paid hit. He began to read each phrase slowly, making sure she heard every word. As they shared the full account, Nicole felt her fear melting into purpose. They were a team again, two people bound by love and a shared mission. Outside, city lights blinked through the window. Inside, a new chapter of their story had begun. The next afternoon, Nicole sat at a small desk in the hospital room, her left foot still on ice but her right foot propped comfortably. She held a pencil and a sketch pad, determined. George watched from a chair beside her, watching her every move. Try to remember exactly what you saw, George encouraged gently. Every line, every curve of the tattoos. Nicole nodded, biting her lip. She closed her eyes, picturing the two men in the restaurant's back room. One had a jagged lightning bolt wrapping around his forearm. The other had a serpent coiled above his wrist. She opened her eyes and sketched the basic shapes. Bold lines, sharp angles. I saw their tattoos in low light, she said quietly. The ink looked dark, almost black, but the shape was clear enough. She added shading to one spiral, frowning thoughtfully. George leaned over. The man with the serpent. Did he move his arms a lot? He asked. Nicole thought. He was calm. He rested his hands on a crate. The serpent curved toward his elbow. It looked like a warning sign. She sketched again, refining the curve. Each pencil stroke brought clarity. She remembered the man's cold eyes, the way he nodded when his partner mentioned the flight. Nicole glanced at George. Do you think this helps? She asked. George nodded, voice firm. Absolutely. These sketches give shape to their faces. Detective Chun will know what to look for. Nicole paused, then signed her name at the bottom of the page. Okay, that's it. That's what I remember. She handed the pad to George. Just hope they're accurate enough. George carefully folded the sketches and placed them in an envelope. They will be, he said. We'll get Detective Chen on this next. He stood, slipping the envelope into his jacket pocket. Nicole leaned back against the pillows, a mix of exhaustion and relief washing over her. Thanks for pushing me to do this, she said softly. Feels like we actually have a shot now. George offered a small smile. We do. Together. He sat back down, taking her hand. Next step, finding the right detective. Nicole nodded, her spirit brightening. Even in a hospital bed, she felt strong, armed with sketches and the love that refused to let her face danger alone. Detective Laura Chen stepped into the hospital room just after noon, her sharp eyes taking in the scene. Nicole sat propped on pillows, sketch pad and envelope on the bedside table. George stood nearby, shoulders tense but hopeful. Mr. and Mrs. Wills? Detective Chen introduced herself, flashing a badge. She extended a hand. I'm Detective Chen. I heard you've got some serious information. Nicole reached forward and shook Chen's hand. Thank you for coming, she said. We're in a tight spot. Flight 742 crashed last night, and we believe 2 men planned a hit on my consulting crew. Detective Chen nodded, voice steady. I read the report. No survivors. But your husband says he overheard men plotting an attack. She gestured to the envelope. I'd like to see those sketches. George passed over the envelope. Chen removed the sketches and studied them closely, tracing the pencil lines. Lightning bolt on forearm, serpent on wrist, she murmured. These are distinct. Nicole added, I saw them in dim light, but I'm sure these shapes are right. Chen looked up, determination in her gaze. If we can find these tattoos, we can find the men. She tucked the sketches into her case file. Do you have any other details? Voices? Words? George recounted names he'd heard mention of fine tech crew, payment details, the flight number. Nicole filled in gaps about the timing and location. Detective Chen took meticulous notes. After a moment, Chen closed her notebook. You two did good work. This is solid enough to open an investigation. She stood, offering a reassuring smile. I'll get forensics on these sketches and check known associates of your business rival. We'll start by interviewing airline staff and airport security. Nicole exhaled, relief softening her features. Thank you, Detective. George nodded, voice firm. We just want justice and to stop whoever's behind this. Chen placed a hand on George's shoulder. You'll have it. We'll move fast. She packed her file and headed for the door. Before leaving, she paused. I'll keep you updated. Stay reachable. As the detective walked away, George and Nicole exchanged a hopeful look. They'd taken the first step together. Full disclosure, sketches, and commitment from a seasoned detective. Outside the window, the city bustled on, unaware of the storm brewing. Precinct, stacks of files and laptop screens glowing with spreadsheets. George and Nicole watched over her shoulder as she keyed in bank records. Here, Chen said, pointing to a column of transactions. See these payments? 2 shell companies, Black Anchor LLC and Red Ledger Incorporated. Both wired sums to offshore accounts right after your consulting deal closed. Nicole leaned in, eyes narrowing. Those names, they came up in Sloane's contract negotiations. She tapped her fingers on the desk. Victor Sloane used these shells to funnel money in and out without detection. George frowned at the numbers. And these payments happened last month? He asked. Exactly, Chen confirmed. Right after you beat Sloane's pitch at the shareholder meeting. These shells were funded with large deposits from his venture fund. Then, a few days later, there was a payout labeled Consulting Logistics. That matches the flight's itinerary cost. Nicole covered her mouth. He set this up to launder money for the hit. Her voice quivered with shock and anger. He gambled on my death to choke our firm's growth. Chen nodded, eyes steely. He's ruthless. And he thought no one would trace these companies back to him. She minimized the spreadsheet and pulled up a flight manifest. I've already contacted a source at the airline. We'll match passenger payment details to these shell accounts. George swallowed hard. He used his money to kill my wife. He clenched his fists. I want to see him pay. Nicole reached across the desk and squeezed his hand. We need to keep this tight. Sloane's got powerful lawyers. She turned to Chen. What's our next step? Chen closed her laptop, determination burning in her eyes. We get search warrants for Sloane's accounts, raid his offices if needed. Then we interview the hit men if we can find them. Your sketches and these records will give us probable cause. George exhaled, feeling a mix of relief and dread. I never imagined this would run so deep. Nicole squared her shoulders. We started this together. We finish it together. She looked at Chin. Thank you. Chin nodded. We're just getting started. She gathered her files. I'll move on this today. Stay out of Sloane's sight, he's dangerous. As they left the precinct, George and Nicole exchanged a resolute glance. The evidence was piling up, the trail was clear, and their enemy was closer than they thought. But united by love and justice, they felt ready to face Victor Sloane head-on. Victor Sloane's high-rise office smelled of expensive leather and arrogance. He paced behind his desk, phone pressed to his ear. Are you sure you wired the funds? He barked. I don't want loose ends. On the other end, a shaking subordinate confirmed. Sloane hung up and stared out the floor-to-ceiling windows at the city below. His reflection looked cold, calculating. He'd built his empire on underhanded deals and backroom sabotage. He saw Nicole Wills as a threat. Her consulting firm was outpacing his, grabbing headlines, drawing new clients. Her success undermined him. Flashbacks flickered in his mind, the first time he met Nicole at a corporate gala, how she dazzled the room with insights while he struggled to command respect. The sting of being outshone. Then came boardroom jabs, his subtle attempts to undercut her presentations, leaking rumors about her firm's stability. Each sabotage attempt failed. Sloane clenched his jaw as he remembered the latest shareholders' meeting. Nicole had exposed his shady accounting, swaying votes away from his pet projects. His face burned with humiliation. He couldn't let this stand. She'll regret crossing me, he whispered. He picked up his phone again. Prepare the hitmen. Make sure it's clean. I want zero connection back to me. He paused, listening to the operative's confirmation. Good. No mistakes. As he disconnected, Sloane ran a hand through his hair. He felt a grim satisfaction. If Nicole and her team never returned from London, he'd own the market unchallenged. His rival silenced. His power intact. Yet, even Victor Sloane didn't know that Detective Chin was closing in. He underestimated the relentless detective and the couple's bond. But in the quiet of his office, Sloane exhaled and smiled. He believed he was untouchable. Down in the lobby, a uniformed officer delivered a file to Sloane's receptionist. Inside, details of the case, tattoo sketches, flight manifests, forensic bank records were now on record. Sloane glanced at the envelope, suspicion flickering. He slipped it into a drawer. Keep an eye on the Wilsies, he murmured. The game was on. Sloane's ruthless plot had set gears in motion, and he didn't realize his own empire of deceit was about to come crashing down. Detective Chin circled the sleek lobby of Sloane's downtown high-rise, GI issue earpiece crackling. Beside her, George wore a borrowed suit, nerves knotting his stomach. You sure about this? He whispered. Chen gave a curt nod. You'll pose as a potential investor interested in Sloane's next fund. I'll be the assistant taking notes. She glanced around. We need to get into his private office to plant a hidden recorder. George swallowed. What if they catch us? Chin checked her watch. They won't. Sloane's distracted with board members upstairs. Stay calm, follow my lead. They approached the front desk. Chin flashed a detective badge, just enough to suggest inside connections. I have an appointment with Mr. Sloane regarding a private placement, she said confidently. Mr. Wills is a partner. The receptionist's eyes flicked to George. He offered a tight smile. Very well. Please wait in his office, the receptionist said, handing them an access card. In the elevator, George's hand trembled around his briefcase. This feels wrong, he muttered. Chin placed a hand on his arm. We're doing what needs to be done. On the 20th floor, they stepped into Sloane's reception area. Plush chairs lined the walls, art on the walls screamed wealth. The receptionist nodded and they passed through another door into a hallway. They paused outside Sloane's office, glass walls, a Victor Sloane, CEO nameplate. Chin held a small recording device. Once inside, I'll distract his assistant. You slip this under the desk. She slid the microphone out of her pocket. George nodded, swallowing. Got it. Chen pressed the elevator button inside the glass office partition. When the door opened, an assistant bowed his head in greeting. Mr. Wills, Miss Chun, Mr. Sloane will see you now. He stepped aside. Inside, Sloane stood, shaking hands with two investors. Welcome, he said, smile practiced. What can I do for you today? Chen moved forward with a question about fund performance. Sloane engaged, unaware as George crouched behind a potted plant and slid the recorder onto the floor beneath the desk. Chen watched Sloane closely. We've reviewed your quarterly reports and are impressed. Sloane beamed. George exhaled quietly as Chen steered the conversation. Every tick of the clock brought them closer to capturing Sloane's confession. The team was united, couple and detective, and their undercover alliance had begun. Soon, the truth would come to light. George crouched behind a sleek marble pillar in Sloane's lobby, heart pounding like a drum. He just slipped the hidden recorder beneath Sloane's desk, and now he was playing lookout for security. The lobby was quiet, save for the soft tap of shoes on tile and distant murmurs from reception. He scanned faces, visitors, staff, the receptionist, but one guard in a crisp suit caught his eye. The man's gaze flicked toward the glass door, landing on George's borrowed suit. George's pulse spiked. Had the guard seen him? He froze, mind racing. The guard took a step forward, eyes narrowing ever so slightly. George swallowed, pressed his back against the pillar, and forced himself to slow his breathing. Everything in him screamed to run, but he had to stay put. Chin was still inside, talking with Sloane. The guard stopped, glanced at the receptionist, then turned away. George let out a silent sigh of relief. He knew it had been close, a real close shave. He straightened his jacket, smoothed his hair with a shaky hand, and glanced at the elevator bay. No sign of Chin yet. He tapped his foot, trying to look relaxed, but sweat beaded at his temples. Inside Sloane's office, Chen's voice carried faintly through the glass. George pressed his ear to the door. He heard Sloane's smooth tone. Yes, I want those men paid. After it's done, make sure it looks mechanical. I can't have this traced back to me. His stomach lurched. George pulled away, grabbing the recorder through the door crack. He slipped it into his briefcase, heart hammering. He peeked around the pillar and saw Chun exiting the elevator with Sloane's assistant in tow. They walked toward George's hiding spot, so close he could smell Chen's perfume. He ducked behind a low planter just as they reached his pillar. The assistant handed something to Chun, a folder. Chun nodded, thanked her, and led the way out. George stayed behind until they disappeared down the corridor. Then he bolted for the elevator, popping the record button to confirm it had captured everything. His hands shook as he listened. Sloane's voice, clear as day. He knew this was the proof they needed. Still, the close call in the lobby reminded him how dangerous this was. Yet every risk was worth exposing Sloane's plot. With the recorder in his hand, George felt a surge of purpose. He texted Nicole, "Got it. Let's finish this." Then he raced out of the building, ready for the next move. Detective Chin huddled with George and Nicole in a quiet corner of a nearby cafe, the tiny recorder between them like a ticking bomb. They'd chosen a booth in the back, away from prying eyes and ears. Chin pressed play and Sloane's voice crackled through the speaker. "I want those men paid. After it's done, stage it as an accident. No witnesses left alive. Understand?" Sloane's calm command sent a chill through the trio. Nicole squeezed George's hand. "That's it. That's what we needed." Her voice trembled but held steel. He admitted it. George swallowed hard. "He hired them to kill my wife and her team." His voice wavered with anger and relief. "Now we have proof." Chin rewound and played it again. Every word was there, the payment directive, the insistence on no trace. She nodded grimly. "This is enough for an arrest warrant. We'll present this to the DA." She tapped her phone. "I'll secure backup, uniformed officers and SWAT if needed." "Sloane's dangerous." Nicole leaned forward. "What about Elena? She was supposed to be on that flight too. We need to keep her safe." She glanced at George, worry etched in her eyes. George looked up, resolute. I'll call her right now. He fished his phone from his pocket. Elena, listen. Don't go anywhere. Stay home until we clear this. You understand. He repeated the plan. Stay off the streets. Keep the phone on. Elena's voice crackled through. I'm in. Thanks for warning me. Relief flooded George. He hung up and met Nicole's gaze. She's safe. Chun slipped the recorder into an evidence bag. I'll handle the chain of custody. Tonight we move on Sloan. We'll get federal agents involved. They'll help us take him down safely. Nicole exhaled, tension easing slightly. We're so close. She turned to George. Thank you for risking everything to get this. George shrugged, trying to look casual. I couldn't have left him unpunished. He paused, voice softening. I just wanted you to be safe. Nicole reached across the table and kissed his cheek. You did more than safe. You saved me. She smiled through tears. Now let's finish this. As they left the cafe, a cool breeze swept past. They felt a weight lift. Proof in hand, allies at their side, and the worst behind them. But they knew the final confrontation with Sloan was still to come. The shareholders' meeting hall was packed. Investors in suits, journalists with notepads, and Sloan's board members whispering among themselves. Nicole stood at the podium, her injured foot propped on a discreet stool, bandage peeking from under her tailored pants. Beside her, George and Detective Chun watched from the front row, ready to step in if things exploded. Nicole cleared her throat. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for gathering on such short notice. Her voice projected confidence. The room hushed. Sloan, seated at the head table, offered a polite smile that didn't reach his eyes. Nicole clicked her remote. The projector flickered to life, displaying Sloan's signature. We all know Mr. Victor Sloan as a leader in our industry. But today you need to hear the truth. She advanced slides showing bank transfers, shell company logos, and the flight manifest for 742. Murmurs rippled through the room. Then she paused and attached to the slide a short audio clip, Sloan's voice ordering no witnesses left alive. Gasps echoed. Sloan's face drained of color. He stood abruptly. This is preposterous, he barked. Nicole pressed the button. The lobby's audio feed cut in, playing the recorded confession through the room's speakers. Sloan's words echoed, stage it as an accident. No witnesses left alive. Shock turned to outrage. Shareholders leapt to their feet. Is this real? Someone shouted. Another investor demanded, we need proof. Detective Chen stood, flashing her badge. I'm Detective Laura Chen. That recording is authentic, legally obtained, and the subject has already been arrested pending charges. She stepped forward, nodding at uniformed officers entering behind her. They began moving toward Sloan. The CEO's chair scraped back. Sloan tried to protest, but officers handcuffed him and read his rights. Journalists scribbled madly. Shareholders whispered about stock fallout. Nicole watched with a mix of vindication and relief. George rose, wrapping an arm around her. Their eyes met, pride and love shining in both. Sloan was led away, his empire unraveling. Nicole turned back to the stunned crowd. Justice has been served, she said, voice steady. Thank you for believing in the truth. As applause broke out, George squeezed her hand. They'd endured betrayal, danger, and pain, and now the verdict was clear. Victor Sloan's reign was over, and George and Nicole could finally rebuild their lives together and stronger than ever. Even with Sloan in handcuffs, his lawyers moved swiftly. George and Nicole watched from the courtroom gallery as Sloan's lead attorney, Malcolm Rivers, paced before Judge Patel's bench. Rivers had a reputation for high-stakes maneuvers. He began his opening, Your Honor, we contend the evidence was unlawfully obtained, private property, coerced confession, chain of custody questions. His voice rang with confidence. Nicole sat forward, heart-thudding. George's hand squeezed hers. They'd faced danger before, but this felt different. Legal gamesmanship could muddy the truth. Detective Chin, seated behind them, exchanged a determined look. She'd prepared for this. Judge Patel tapped a gavel. "Present your motions," she said. Rivers launched into procedural objections, warrants, admissibility, technicalities. Sloane's defense lawyers aimed to cast doubt on the recorder's legitimacy. The courtroom buzzed, reporters scribbled furiously. Nicole's stomach twisted. Doubt crept in. Could their hardest-won proof be thrown out? Then Detective Chin stood. Her tone was crisp as she laid out the chain of custody, how the device was planted under lawful warrant, how officers documented each transfer, how Sloane's own words sank the defense's argument. She presented receipts for the recorder's purchase, the warrant signed by Magistrate Torres, and sworn affidavits from airport staff affirming George's initial sighting of the tattooed men. George swallowed, impressed by Chen's meticulous preparation. Rivers tried to interrupt, but Judge Patel silenced him. "I will review the affidavits," she said. "Proceed." Next, the prosecutor called Elena Ruiz to the stand. Elena, still shaken from the crash news, recounted how George's warning kept her off that flight. Nicole sat next to her friend, pride and gratitude in her eyes. Elena's testimony drove home the human cost, lives almost lost, families devastated. Finally, the DA presented flight maintenance records showing no mechanical failure matched Sloane's plan. The explosion had been tampered with. Pipes were sabotaged by hired hands. The defense tried to counter, but the mountain of evidence, financial records, tattoo sketches, recorded confession, eyewitness accounts, was overwhelming. After hours of arguments, Judge Patel leaned forward. She ruled to admit the recorded confession and evidence, overruling defense motions. Sloane's lawyers slumped. "We'll proceed to trial," Patel said. Nicole exhaled, relief flooding her. George whispered, "We did it." She smiled, tears in her eyes. Battle won, but the final verdict was still awaited. The packed courtroom fell silent as the jury filed in. George sat beside Nicole, who leaned on her crutches, her injured foot resting on a cushion. The air crackled with tension. Sloane, in a dark suit and handcuffs, glared at them from the defendant's dock. Prosecutor Dana Reyes rose for her closing argument. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," she began, voice steady. "You have heard the evidence, a recorded confession detailing a plot to kill a consulting crew, financial records tracing payments from Sloane's shell companies, eyewitness sketches of the hired men, and testimony showing the sabotage of Flight 742. She paused, letting the weight of each element sink in. This was a premeditated act of murder, pure and simple. Reyes paced before the jury. Victor Sloane used his wealth and power to silence a competitor. His actions aren't those of a business titan, they're those of a criminal mastermind. She pointed to Sloane. He gambled with lives, including the life of Nicole Wills, a woman brave enough to stand here today. Nicole felt heat rise in her cheeks as gasps rippled through the courtroom. She met George's eyes, steady and loving. He gave her a small nod. When the defense stood to deliver their closing, they offered a weak plea. Sloane never intended real harm, they claimed, and the confession was taken out of context. But the jury's faces remained unmoved. Judge Patel instructed the jury. "Deliberate carefully. Justice requires truth, not power." As the jury retired, Nicole clutched George's hand. The minutes stretched, each tick of the clock echoing her heartbeat. Finally, the foreperson returned. The judge asked, "Have you reached a verdict?" The foreperson stood. "We have, Your Honor. We find the defendant guilty on all counts." A collective exhale filled the room. Sloane's face contorted with fury and disbelief. He was led away. Nicole felt tears spill down her cheeks, tears of relief, vindication, and triumph. George pulled her into a gentle embrace. "It's over," he whispered. Nicole nodded against his shoulder. "Justice served." In that moment, two worlds came together, law and love, truth and justice. Their bond had weathered danger and betrayal. And now, with Sloane's conviction, they could finally close this painful chapter. Months later, the warm glow of fairy lights danced over Wills's kitchen as friends, family, and loyal customers gathered to celebrate the restaurant's 5th anniversary, and George and Nicole's renewed bond. A banner above read, "Together, stronger." Nicole, on crutches but radiant, raised a glass of sparkling cider. "To George," she began, voice clear, "to love teach." They clinked glasses and the room erupted in applause. Marcus, Elena, and Detective Chin stood nearby, beaming. Even regular customers cheered, wiping happy tears. George took Nicole's hand and led her to the center of the room. "5 years ago," he said softly, "we met at a charity gala and we dreamed big." He looked into her eyes. "Tonight, we've rebuilt that dream stronger, wiser, together." Nicole nodded, tears shining. "We faced fear, betrayal, and pain. But we found justice and we held on to each other." They shared a gentle dance to a soft song playing in the background. George guided Nicole carefully, mindful of her injury. Around them, laughter and music blended into a perfect symphony of renewal. After the dance, George gestured to the cake, a replica of the restaurant's cozy exterior, complete with miniature tables. He sliced a piece for Nicole and fed it to her with a playful grin. She laughed, frosting on her lip. As the night settled, George and Nicole stepped outside onto the quiet sidewalk. Nicole leaned on his shoulder. "We did it," she whispered. He kissed her forehead. "We did." They looked at the restaurant's warm lights and felt that the worst was behind them. Their partnership had been tested by fire, literally and figuratively, but it had emerged stronger than ever. Hey everyone! Drop your thoughts, lessons learned, and perspectives in the comments below. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe, and share with your friends.